none. Now I believe in some. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that there is greatness inside all of us. Best believe what you believe is what you will become. That what ain't given is a...
Hey, what's going on, guys? This right here is the new M1 iPad Pro for 2021. But we've actually got this guy right here, the Apple Pencil Generation 2 as well, and the new Magic Keyboard. So let's go ahead and unbox these. Okay, so first, Apple Pencil. This is the second generation of the Apple Pencil. It is, I believe, a lower latency, and there's some other specs that I don't remember off the top of my head, but here is the box that it comes in, if it'll focus. Yeah, basic Apple Pencil. I believe this goes for $130, which is pretty expensive, $30 above the Generation 1 Apple Pencil. Oh, I think this also charges wirelessly with the iPad. Unlike the other one, I think it was Lightning. That's an improvement. But let's get into the keyboard. Okay, this is the keyboard. I got the white version because I got the silver version of the iPad. It's pretty strong magnets. This is my first Magic Keyboard. It looks pretty nice. Here, let me show you guys. This is the white layout. There's the Apple logo on the back, obviously. It has a pretty good tilt. I mean, it's a Magic Keyboard. It's just for the iPad. This goes for around $300 to $350, I want to say. This is supported with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th generation of the new iPad Pros. Okay, and now the iPad Pro with the new M1 chip for 2021. This iPad basically hasn't changed since last year, unless if you get the 12.9 inch, and obviously M1 processor. And so first thing, the camera actually, the lower camera has a 12 megapixel wide angle, and the top camera of the camera is 10 megapixels and ultra wide, so you get a little bit more wider. Then it obviously has the LiDAR scanner on the back, which allows the iPad to have better AR capabilities within some apps, like the measuring app. You can use the measuring app to measure, and you can really notice it when it picks up the edges very sharply. So back to the processor. This one has the M1 compared to the A12Z chip from last year's iPad Pro, and the year before was the A12X processor. Now both this A12X/Z chip and the new M1 chip that's in this iPad this year are both actually silicon made by Apple, and it might leave you with the question, is this iPad a big performance leap, or is it a little bit of just the same thing? Well, it's actually a really big performance leap from last year. Now that this iPad has the M1 chip, it has the same chip that is in the Mac Minis, the MacBook Air and Pro, or the Pro and Air, I think. And it also is in the new iMac Pro that just released just this past week as well. So we could argue that this iPad has a computer chip which is just as strong as the ones in the MacBook Air or iMac Pro. And obviously with this M1 chip, we are brought 8 cores of GPU, 8 cores of CPU, and 16 cores of Neural Engine. Another thing that Apple actually told us, which was unusual, was that they told us the amount of RAM in this year's iPad. So in the iPad with the 1 to 2 terabytes, it has 16 gigs of RAM, and the lower ends of storage has only 8 gigs of RAM. And with this extra RAM, it's actually pretty noticeable in the more heavier apps that you can download on your iPad. Like if you're editing and you're gaming and you're streaming on another app, you can have multiple apps open and jump from one to another and pick up just right where you came off of without any waiting. For example, I was using this to edit photos, sometimes even videos, and sometimes using it to game or stream on different apps, and I was able to pick up in my app wherever and however long it was open. But some of you guys might be wanting some benchmarks, so here are some benchmarks on last year's iPad compared to this iPad. So last year's 2020 iPad Pro was hitting around 4,500 on the multi-core score on Geekbench, but when I tested it on this iPad Pro with the new M1 chip, it was hitting nearly 7,000 score. To break it down even simpler, Apple said during the spring-loaded event that the CPU was actually 50% faster than the previous year, and compared to the first ever iPad generation, it is now 75 times faster performances in CPU. And on the GPU side, it was said that this year's M1 chip allowed it to be 40% faster, as well as 1500, which is 1,500 times faster in GPU compared to the first ever iPad. And with this power, it makes a lot of the bigger projects, which is for the pro users, that's why it's called the Pro, it makes it very, very easy to import and export your files very fast and efficiently, especially with the new Thunderbolt 4.0 port. So actually with the Thunderbolt 4.0, it allows you to have 40 gigabit throughput for importing files. So with that information, it basically says that you can import a lot more files and videos, or either one, very, very quickly and efficiently. Okay, so some more changes about this iPad is that it's actually 0.5 millimeter thicker. They did this just to fit a bigger battery, and maybe they did it for the inside of this camera, which I'll talk about later. So another thing that they actually changed about this iPad is that they changed up a little bit of the front facing camera. And no, it's not in the landscape mode at the top. It's still on the side when you're holding it in landscape mode. But they did a very, very good and maybe not so good. I don't know why you would not like this. But they actually added ultra wide into this front facing camera. So you might be wondering, why is this so important? And why do we need a wide angle in the front facing? So there's actually a new feature in this iPad with FaceTime and a bunch of other video call applications. I'm not sure, I think Zoom has it, but it's called center staging. What this basically does is that it will track a face and the center staging will focus on that face. But then if another face comes, like say my hand right here is a face, it'll basically zoom out and focus on both faces. And this is very helpful in FaceTimes when you're moving around a lot, or if you have your iPad in a certain place and you keep on walking back and forth, like those knockoff cameras that you guys see on Amazon or somewhere else. And so since this iPad isn't so different from the last year, you might be wondering, why should I upgrade to this one if it's just for the more pro performance? Well, actually they made a big difference in the new screen on this iPad. So this iPad right here, which is the 12.9, has the new Liquid Retina XDR display. But keep in mind, this is only for the 12.9 inch and not the 11 inch. And I'll talk about why that may be in a little bit. But basically what this allows us to do is have the peak brightness way higher. And in this iPad, it's actually the brightest iPad they've ever made with a 1600 nit brightness, as well as it will be better for brighter environments. Say you're sitting at a window, or if you're sitting even outside near the sun, you'll be able to still see your screen and you won't have to turn up the brightness all the way. And also in this display, it has mini LEDs. It has 2,500 dimming zones, as well as 10,000 LEDs inside. And another advantage is that you get a better contrast ratio. In this one, it is a 1 to 1 million contrast ratio, which will give you good colors and make darker darks and brighter brights. And now back to why the 11-inch iPad Pro may not have the Liquid Retina XDR display. Now, it might be just because of the cost. This iPad starts at $10.99, and the 11-inch, I believe, starts at $7.99, and that might be one of the biggest reasons it may be more expensive in this iPad, just because it has that Liquid Retina XDR display, and also it may just be more cost effective to make it at $7.99 for the 11-inch. But I mean, we can't complain. Apple's trying to make the iPad Pro for the 11-inch, which is smaller, to make it more cost effective and get more people to buy it. So this still has the same design as last year almost. It still has the quad speaker setup and great quality mics, as well as the brand new front-facing camera that I announced. But it's an iPad Pro, so the design's obviously going to be really good. Now I want to talk about iPad OS and the potential for iPad OS. So now that there's an M1 chip in here, that's basically a computer chip. So this iPad can actually handle a lot now. So now we need to wait for the OS to get better and to allow more applications for using the M1 chip. There really aren't that many video editing. Like, I know that there's LumaFusion. There's no Final Cut Pro yet on this, which I'm kind of waiting for. But this M1 chip needs to be used for something, so we might be able to see this in iOS 15 possibly, as there are a lot of new rumors talking about the home screen improvements with widgets and new applications coming to iPad OS. But yeah, we can kind of call this a computer now. It's not just a tablet. It still has the same chip as the MacBooks and the Mac Minis and the new iMac Pro, just in a different disguise. So let me know what you guys think about this iPad Pro, and do you think it's worth it? I upgraded from an older iPad. So far I'm loving this iPad. So let me know what you guys think, and before we go, let's talk about this. What's so different about this than the last one? So basically, this one is going to support the 0.5 millimeter thickness of the previous generation's iPad Pro. It really just, you just plop it in there and it's easier to close. That's it. There's no other differences in this keyboard from the last keyboard, but it just supports that 0.5 millimeter of thickness. But yeah, this is the iPad Pro for 2021 with the new M1 chip. I hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.